We want to congratulate the people of Jordan on their Day of Independence yesterday. Today, the day after, we often, and in the words of Professor Swidler, think about what freedom is and what is independence. Freedoms and independence gives us a wider vision of the world. The shackles of being unfree, the shackles of not having our own independent voice and our own independent look at the world is too difficult for us to imagine. It is the freedom to think and a freedom to believe and a freedom to act. And one of those people who is a free thinker, an independent scholar, a person who has led people, is another great teacher. Rabbi Lee's teacher, and Rabbi Irving Greenberg, one of our great teachers, and one of our fellow dialogue partners, who again in Indonesia set a new level of understanding in the year 2000 of what it means to come into a Muslim nation that did not yet embrace or even recognize Judaism as a religion, and to speak freely and openly from his heart. We're very blessed to have Rabbi Irving Greenberg from New York City come with us today, because he leads us into a vision. I always think that one of the great quotes of the Talmud was, "Who is the person who is wise? A person who can learn from everyone." He is that person who looks around the world and learns from every person he meets, from every community he engages with, and therefore brings the beauty of business, the beauty of Islam, the beauty of Christianity, the good things that each of you have to teach each other, and teaches the Jewish people how to think and conceptualize a world that is much greater than any one of us can imagine, because we are free people. Rabbi Irving Greenberg.
Thank you very much. It is a privilege to be here with all of you in the presence of the Crown Prince and our mutual community. We obviously are meeting in the context of a trialogue of Jews, Christians, and Muslims, which in itself is the outgrowth of a generation, which Len just very eloquently described, of growing willingness to understand, speak, listen, and learn from each other. I want to start, nevertheless, with the other side of the coin, which involves a certain confession and a certain acknowledgement of failure on our part of we who are engaged in dialogue. In this world at the present time, in the popular understanding and the consensus of media and everybody else really, religion on balance is seen as a force, a primary force, on the side of war, on the side of death, on the side of unrelenting enmity, not prepared to make compromises. Again, there's much stereotyping and unfairness there. But there's also a truth that people recognize that the more pious, I put that in quotation marks, but that's the understanding, the more traditional, the more likely is that person to be a suicide bomber, an ethnic cleanser. Again, I want to stress not that all pious people in that particular faith are that, but on balance, statistically speaking, it is more probable. In my own religion, for I feel one must speak about oneself more than the other, next door in the land of Israel, people who are more observant, more traditional on balance, are more likely to tolerate anti-Arab attitudes, more skeptical about the possibility of making peace, more resistant to compromises and concessions that may be needed to achieve that peace. And around the world, again, we can protest that's not authentic Judaism, not authentic Islam, not authentic Christianity. But I think one must confront the reality of the common understanding. A around the world, people armored by a stronger conviction in the existence of God, in particular where it goes hand in hand with the sense of possession of a final or a exclusive or an ultimate revelation, use it more frequently than others to armor, to energize the use of violence against those who don't meet these standards. Now again, I'll keep saying, not all the devout, not all those who are committed, and I don't believe even that the dominant form, but frankly strong enough to influence the mainstream, either by shaping it, or by intimidating it, or by restricting it from denouncing or excluding this viewpoint. And even when the mainstream objects and expresses that objection, it seems to be lost, and there is a conviction that the other side has more on its side. So the overall impression is, again, to use a language of my own tradition, it is what is called in the Jewish tradition, Chilul Hashem, the profanation of God's name. Now, Jewish tradition has a very simple category here. It says, the average person in our lifetime particularly, God no longer appears in their lives in a visible, manifest, beyond question, miraculous intervention that anybody can see with their own eyes. So how do people then know about God and God's existence? The answer is, for the most part, in the testimony, in the lives, in the behaviors, in the teachings of those who encounter God and who live a religious life and are prepared to share this in their language, in their teaching, in their personal behavior, and in their witness. So, when the people who practice the religion, by their lives, by their behavior, by their teaching, add to the credibility of faith in God, or they add to the conviction that the religious source, the classical source, be it Torah, be it Quran, be it New Testament, be it the Gospels, when their witness is powerful enough to add to the credibility of these texts, this is called Kiddush Hashem, and God's name is made holy. God's presence made more real, more credible, more attractive. When in fact, the testimony is the other way, people become convinced that to be associated with God is to be harsher, crueler, more relenting, more in favor of inequality of women or whatever it be, then of course this is Chilul Hashem, this is profanation of God's name. God's name is made smaller, as it were, less credible, a less credible presence in the world. So I think in a very real sense, we have to come to grips with the fact that this is true and that this is our responsibility as those who believe otherwise to confront our own testimony, our own witness, our own teaching, and its effectiveness or ineffectiveness. In a sense, my answer is if someone's willing to die by blowing up other people to prove their faith in God, are we dialogicians prepared to give our lives? Not by killing, not by blowing up, but no less total sacrifice for the conviction that God is the God of mercy and of love and of compassion and of respect for the diversity of people. Somehow at the present time, our witness, our testimony is neither as total, as credible, as effective as the other, and that remains a major task for each of us.